Okay, so we're diving deep today into something pretty fundamental. I think you'd agree.
Oh, absolutely.
Happiness.
Yeah.
And we've got this really interesting guide that someone sent in called How to Be Happy Naturally.
Right.
What really stood out to me skimming through it was it's not about like, those quick fixes or, kind of temporary happiness boosts.
Yeah,
It's really about building something that lasts and it comes from within.
exactly. It's about that sort of deep sense of contentment rather than chasing those fleeting kind of highs.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, building this inner strength that can help you deal with whatever life throws at you.
Totally.
So for you, you always want to get to the heart of things, cut through the noise.
Yeah.
I think this guide is going to be perfect.
Okay.
It's packed with really practical ideas. And our goal in this deep dive is to really pull out those actionable insights,
Right.
the stuff you can actually start using in your life today.
Love it.
So first things first, how does this guide actually define happiness?
Well, it says that, we can't expect to be like super happy all the time.
Right.
That's not really realistic.
Yeah.
But it's more about a kind of lasting sense of peace, contentment, fulfillment.
Right.
It's about having that inner stability.
Yeah, like a foundation.
Yeah, exactly. And what I find fascinating is that the guide looks at happiness from this really holistic perspective.
Okay.
Like it considers our biology, our psychology, our daily habits, and our whole lifestyle.
So it's not just about, those big moments. It's really about those daily choices we make.
Yeah, exactly. The little things add up.
Okay, so the guide starts by talking about physical health,
Okay.
which makes sense. It's hard to feel good mentally if you're not feeling good physically.
Right. You need that foundation.
So let's start with nutrition,
Okay.
because it seems like what we eat has a way bigger impact on our mood
Yeah.
than just, giving us energy.
Oh, for sure. And the guide points out these really interesting connections. Like it talks about complex carbohydrates,
Mm-hmm.
things like whole grains, sweet potatoes, quinoa,
Right.
and how those are linked to the release of serotonin.
And serotonin is that feel-good chemical.
Right. Exactly. It's often associated with, feelings of happiness and well-being.
Right.
And what's interesting is that these complex carbs, they're digested more slowly.
Right.
So you get this more sustained release of glucose, which then, leads to more stable serotonin levels.
So it's not like you're on this sugar roller coaster up and down all day.
Exactly. It's about that steady energy and mood.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not just about, cutting out the bad stuff, but actively choosing foods that actually help us feel better.
Yeah, totally.
What about fats? Because there's so much confusing information out there.
Yeah, so the guide specifically highlights healthy fats,
Okay.
like the ones you find in avocados, nuts, olive oil.
Okay.
And these are so important for brain function.
I mean, our brains are mostly fat, right?
Exactly. So when we give our brains good quality fats, it helps them, function at their best.
It's like giving your brain premium fuel.
Exactly. And that helps with, regulating emotions, thinking clearly, all that good stuff.
Okay, so fats are in, what about protein?
Yeah, so we usually think of protein for building muscles and energy, right?
Right.
But the guide points out that protein is also super important because it provides us with amino acids.
Okay.
And those are the building blocks for neurotransmitters.
Sure.
They're like these chemical messengers in our brain, and they play a huge role in mood regulation.
Okay.
So getting enough protein isn't just about physical health, it's also really important for our emotional well-being.
Yeah, so it's fueling our brain in a different way.
Totally. It's giving it the raw materials it needs to function properly.
Wow, this is all making so much sense. And one thing that really caught my eye in the guide was the emphasis on gut health.
Yeah.
It feels like that's become a huge area of research lately.
It really has, and for good reason.
Yeah.
The gut-brain connection is so powerful.
Right.
And the guide talks about the importance of eating probiotic-rich foods, like yogurt, kimchi, kefir,
Okay.
those kinds of things, because they help to promote a healthy balance of bacteria in our gut.
Right.
And believe it or not, those bacteria can actually influence our mood.
Seriously.
Yeah, they can actually impact the production of certain neurotransmitters that affect our mood.
So a happy gut really can mean a happier you.
Absolutely. It's all connected.
That's amazing. Okay, and then there's something we all know we should be doing, but sometimes forget about.
What's that?
Hydration.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the most basic thing, but so easy to overlook.
Totally. And even being a little bit dehydrated can make us feel tired, irritable, have trouble concentrating. And
Yeah.
all of that can really affect our mood.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So staying hydrated is like the foundation for feeling good.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about nourishing our bodies from the inside out.
Yeah.
What's next on the physical health front?
Well, the guide then goes into exercise,
Okay.
which most of us know is good for us.
Right.
But the guide specifically highlights the mood-boosting effects of exercise.
So it's more than just about physical fitness.
Exactly. It can actually help regulate our mood.
How so?
Well, when we exercise, our body releases these things called endorphins,
You okay?
and they're like natural mood boosters.
Okay, so that's like that runner's high we hear about.
Exactly. It's that feeling of, pleasure and well-being that you get after a good workout.
Yeah, like you feel good.
Yeah, and on top of that, regular exercise can help reduce stress anxiety, even symptoms of depression.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it can also boost our self-confidence and help us sleep better.
So many benefits.
Right.
The guide also talks about different types of exercise.
It does, yeah. So like aerobic exercise, just things like running, cycling, dancing, those are really good for stimulating those endorphins.
Okay, makes sense.
And then strength training, using weights or resistance bands that can really boost self-esteem and help reduce stress.
Okay.
And then you have things like yoga and stretching, which are great for flexibility, but also for promoting mindfulness,
Right.
which is all about connecting our mind and body.
And I find that even just going for a walk in nature can be so grounding.
Absolutely. It's a great way to combine physical activity with the calming effects of nature.
Yeah, it's like a double whammy.
Totally.
Okay. And then there's sleep, which, let's be real, a lot of us don't prioritize as much as we should.
Yeah, true.
And the guide is pretty clear about how not getting enough sleep can really mess with our mood.
Yeah, it affects our energy levels, our
Yeah.
ability to focus. It can really impact our whole day.
Right, it's like a domino effect.
Exactly.
So what are some of the things that the guide suggests for actually getting better sleep,
Well, it recommends having a consistent sleep schedule,
even on the weekends?
even on the weekends, yeah,
Okay,
because that helps to regulate our body's natural sleep-wake cycle.
makes sense.
It also says that we should try to avoid screens before bed.
Because of that blue light?
Exactly. The blue light from our phones and computers can actually interfere with the production of melatonin.
Which is the sleep hormone.
Exactly, and that can make it harder to fall asleep. The guide also suggests creating a relaxing bedtime routine,
Yeah.
like, reading a book, taking a bath, meditating, listening to calming music.
Just something to signal to your body that it's time to wind down.
Exactly. And then making sure your bedroom is dark, quiet, and cool,
Yeah.
so it's really conducive to sleep.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered the physical side of things.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the mental side, because the guide emphasizes that our thoughts have a huge impact on how we experience the world.
Yeah, our mindset is everything.
So where do we even begin with cultivating a more positive mental landscape?
Well, the guide starts with gratitude,
Okay.
and it explains that when we focus on the good things we have in our lives rather than dwelling on what we lack, it can really boost our happiness.
Right. It's about appreciating what we already have.
Exactly. It's about
Yeah.
shifting our focus from scarcity to abundance.
But how do we actually do that? Just telling ourselves to be grateful doesn't always make us feel it.
Right, so the guide suggests some practical things we can try,
Okay.
like keeping a gratitude journal.
Where you write down things you're grateful for.
Yeah, exactly. And the act of actually writing it down can really help us to notice those positive things more often.
Makes sense.
Another thing is to express appreciation to others. Tell them how much you appreciate them,
Yeah.
whether it's verbally or even in writing.
Right.
And that not only makes them feel good, but it also reinforces those feelings of gratitude in ourselves.
Okay.
And then just taking a few minutes each day to reflect on positive experiences,
Okay.
that can really help to cultivate a more grateful outlook over time.
Yeah, it's about actively looking for those positive moments.
Exactly.
Okay. But what about those negative thoughts?
Yeah.
The ones that just pop up uninvited.
Oh, yeah. Those can be tricky, but the guide has some suggestions for managing those too.
Okay.
One is to try to reframe challenges.
So instead of seeing something as purely negative.
Yeah, try to see it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
Okay.
It's a subtle shift, but it can really change how we experience those setbacks.
That's a good one.
The guide also talks about how overthinking and worrying can be really draining.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Exactly. So it encourages us to consciously redirect that energy
Okay.
towards actually solving the problem or taking action.
Instead of just, stewing in it.
Yeah, and importantly, it reminds us to be mindful of negative influences in our lives.
Yeah.
Like hanging out with people who are always negative or constantly consuming negative news, or spending too much time on social media and seeing things that make us feel bad.
Yeah, it's tough to feel good when you're surrounded by negativity.
Totally.
Okay, and this next one I think a lot of people struggle with.
What's that?
Self-compassion.
Ah,
We're often our own worst critics.
yeah, we can be really hard on
But
ourselves.
the guide emphasizes the importance of treating ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a friend.
Exactly. It's about understanding that we're not perfect
Right.
and that everyone makes mistakes.
And that's okay.
Yeah. It's okay, we can learn from those mistakes without beating ourselves up about them.
So self-compassion is really about being on our own side.
Exactly. It's about being supportive and understanding of ourselves.
Okay, and then there's the whole idea of mindfulness and being present,
Yeah,
which is easier said than done in our busy lives.
totally. But the guide defines mindfulness as being fully present in the moment.
Okay.
Not dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, just being here and now.
Right.
And it suggests practicing things like meditation, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Okay.
It also encourages us to really engage in our everyday activities.
So like not just going through the motions.
Yeah, like really savoring our food, paying attention to the sensations of taking a walk, really being present in our conversations.
Being mindful.
Exactly. And it also suggests that we try to limit multitasking.
Because when we try to do too many things at once, we don't really do any of them well.
Right. And we don't really enjoy them as much either.
Yeah, it's like we're spreading ourselves too thin.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about taking care of our physical and mental well-being. Now the guide moves on to the realm of relationships.
Okay.
And it states that strong, meaningful relationships are essential for happiness.
Oh, absolutely. We're social creatures,
Yeah.
We thrive on connection, and those relationships provide us with support, love, a sense of belonging.
And the guide emphasizes surrounding ourselves with positive and supportive people, right?
Yeah, because those relationships can really lift us up and nourish us.
And it suggests that we try to limit our interactions with people who are consistently negative or draining.
Oh, right, because those relationships can really bring us down.
Okay, so it's about being mindful of who we spend our time with.
Exactly.
But what about the relationships we already have?
Yeah.
How do we nurture those?
Well, the guide says it's important to actively strengthen those bonds.
Okay.
And that means making an effort to express appreciation to the people we care about,
Right.
communicating openly and honestly with them,
Yeah.
and spending quality time together, whether it's with family or friends.
It's about making those relationships a priority.
Exactly.
And it's not just about receiving support, it's also about giving back.
Yeah, and the guide highlights how helping others can actually boost our own happiness.
It's like that whole idea of paying it forward.
Exactly, and it suggests things like volunteering, offering help to those in need,
Right.
even just doing random acts of kindness for people.
It's amazing how much those small gestures can brighten someone's day.
Totally. And it often makes us feel good too.
It's like a win-win.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now let's move on to something that can feel a little bit daunting.
What's that?
Finding purpose and meaning.
Yeah, that's a big one.
It can feel like a really abstract concept.
Yeah.
But the guide emphasizes that having a sense of purpose is so important for lasting happiness.
Right. It gives us direction and motivation.
So how do we actually go about finding that?
Well, the guide encourages us to explore and identify activities that really light us up.
Like,
Things that bring us joy and a sense of fulfillment, whether it's through creative expression, helping others, connecting with nature, learning new things, whatever it is that feels meaningful to us.
so it's about really tuning into what resonates with us.
Exactly. And then pursuing those things.
Okay.
And the guide also suggests setting personal goals that align with our values.
Right. So we're not just drifting through life.
Exactly. We have something to strive for.
Yeah. And then there's the whole idea of living with intention.
Right. So that means being mindful of how we spend our time and energy
Okay.
and making choices that support our goals and values.
So it's about being intentional with our actions.
Exactly.
And the guide also encourages us to be lifelong learners.
Yes, because learning new things helps us to grow and evolve.
And it keeps things interesting.
Totally.
Okay. And then there's the whole idea of being authentic.
Yeah. Which can be tough in a world where there's so much pressure to conform.
Right.
But the guide says that living authentically means being true to ourselves.
Okay.
Expressing our true thoughts and beliefs, not comparing ourselves to others.
Right.
And following our own passions, even if they're different.
It's about being comfortable in our own skin.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've talked about taking care of ourselves physically and mentally, building strong relationships, and finding our purpose.
Yeah.
Now let's address something that we all experience.
What's that?
Stress.
Yes, stress.
The guide acknowledges that stress is a part of life,
It's inevitable.
but the key is how we manage it.
Right.
So what are some of the healthy coping mechanisms that the guide suggests?
Well, one thing is to practice deep breathing exercises.
Because when we're stressed, we tend to take those short, shallow breaths.
Exactly. And deep breathing can help to calm our nervous system.
Okay.
The guide also suggests engaging in creative activities
Sure.
like painting, writing, playing music,
Yeah.
anything that allows us to express ourselves and release tension,
That's a good one.
and then taking short breaks throughout the day.
Just to kind of reset.
Yeah, just to step away from whatever we're doing and clear our heads.
Makes sense.
And the guide also highlights the stress-reducing benefits of spending time in nature.
Oh, yeah, there's something so calming about being outdoors.
Absolutely. It's like our natural reset button.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just going for a walk in the park can make a difference.
Totally.
Okay, and let's not forget about laughter.
Oh, yeah. Laughter is the best medicine.
It really is. It's such a natural mood booster.
And it can help to reduce stress levels, too.
Yeah,
So the guide suggests actively seeking out opportunities for laughter.
right.
Watching a funny movie, spending time with people who make us laugh.
Right.
Even just trying to find the humor in everyday situations.
It's about not taking ourselves too seriously.
Exactly.
Okay, so in today's world, a lot of our stress comes from our constant connection to the digital world.
Yeah, true.
And the guide addresses that.
It does. It acknowledges that too much screen time can lead to anxiety, comparison,
Mm.
and just general unhappiness.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the comparison game on social media.
Totally. And it can make us feel inadequate or like we're not good enough. So the guide suggests limiting our social media use.
Okay.
Maybe setting some time limits, being more selective about who we follow,
Yeah.
even taking breaks from social media altogether.
Like a digital detox.
Exactly.
And the guide also encourages us to engage in more offline activity.
Right. Things that don't involve screens, like reading, spending time outdoors, connecting with people face to face,
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
It's about being more present in the real world.
Exactly.
Okay, another interesting point that the guide makes is about embracing simplicity.
Ah.
He talks about how overcomplication can lead to stress.
Right. The more stuff we have, the more commitments we make, the more overwhelmed we can feel.
Yeah, and the guide suggests decluttering our physical space.
Yeah, because a clean and organized space can help to create a calmer mind.
Right, it's like outer order, inner calm.
Exactly. And it also suggests simplifying our commitments,
Okay,
learning to say no to things that aren't truly important to us,
right.
and focusing on experiences rather than material possessions.
It's about quality over quantity.
Totally.
Okay, this next section I think is really important, but can be tough for a lot of people.
What's that?
Practicing acceptance and letting go of control.
Yes.
Because the guide explains that a big part of happiness is accepting the things we can't change.
Right. It's about recognizing that life isn't always going to go our way.
Yeah, and it's okay to let go of the need to control everything,
Exactly. And the guide encourages us to embrace imperfection.
both in ourselves and in the world around us.
Yeah, because striving for perfection can actually lead to a lot of unhappiness.
Right. It's an impossible standard.
Exactly. And it also talks about the importance of letting go of resentment and past hurts.
It's hard to be happy when we're holding on to anger.
Yeah, it's like we're poisoning ourselves.
So forgiveness is really for our own benefit.
Exactly. It's a gift we give ourselves.
And the guide also advises us to be more flexible.
Right. Life is unpredictable and things are constantly changing. So instead of resisting those changes, it's better to just go with the flow.
Right.
Be adaptable.
Okay, and the final point that the guide makes is about making joy a daily habit.
Ah, I love that.
It's about choosing happiness every day.
Yeah, and it encourages us to engage in activities that bring us joy.
The things that make us smile.
Exactly, like listening to music, dancing, spending time with loved ones,
Yeah.
pursuing our hobbies, whatever it is that brings us joy.
And it also highlights the importance of celebrating small wins.
Yes, acknowledging our progress and giving ourselves credit for our efforts.
Even the little things.
Even the little things, yeah.
It's about noticing those moments of joy throughout our day.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been such a fascinating deep dive into this guide.
Yeah, it's amazing how many different things contribute to our happiness.
And what's really stood out to me is that the guide emphasizes that happiness isn't something we have to chase after.
Right.
It's something we cultivate from within
Exactly.
through our choices, our habits, our mindset.
It's empowering to realize that we have so much control over our own happiness.
Yeah, and it's not about making these huge changes all at once.
Right.
It's about making those small, consistent efforts day after day.
Exactly. The little things add up over time.
And ultimately, true happiness isn't about achieving some perfect state or never experiencing challenges.
Right.
It's about embracing life in all its messy glory, finding joy in the everyday, and nurturing those things that bring us meaning and connection. So for you listening, I want you to think about one small thing, one actionable step from this deep dive that resonated with you,
Yeah.
something you could realistically start doing today to cultivate more happiness in your life.
Because it all starts with that first step.
Exactly.
One small change can make a world of difference.
It really can.